Welcome back to Akamai TV. I'm Nelson Rodriguez. When you're investing time or money into new technology, it's important for you to understand where you are on the hype cycle. Because irrational exuberance, of course, can be risky and everybody knows it, but being too cautious can also be risky. Now, luckily for us, I'm talking to someone who has spent a lot of his career building practical technology that's actually useful for real businesses. Michael Fay has been with Akamai for many years, but you've spent the last year working on our distributed ledger technology. Now, the late 20th century poet Flava Flav once said, "Don't believe the hype." Was he right?
Flava Flav said a lot of things. Don't believe the hype. When it comes to innovation and new technology, you set it up well. I mean, there is a hype cycle. People get excited about new vocabulary. We've seen it in AR, we've seen it in VR. We saw it in the last year and a half in blockchain. And that was sponsored a lot by the popularity of Bitcoin. And then, that hype kind of got squashed with initial coin offerings where smaller businesses found funding through tokenizing their offering. And when that market bottomed out, a lot of people took a step back and they drove that hype cycle into what I think Gartner appropriately calls the trough of disillusionment. When it comes to hype, I think everything has a little bit of hype when the ideation starts. Hey, I've got a great idea, and they bring it to your desk, and people are like, I could really get behind that idea. And then as that idea needs to go through creation and come to fruition, I think that there is a little bit of exhaustion, and people kind of take a step back and they look at new technology and they say, all right, I enjoy the narrative, I like the story, but come on, man, where is it? What does it do? So, Flav is he's on the right path. Don't believe the hype. Believe the taste of the pudding. Although I don't think Flava Flav would ever say that.
I think he would say that, and it's really the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Is really the
taste. I went there.
Yeah, all right, that's good. Now, you used both terms. You said blockchain, which is the word on the street.
Yeah. But
I also heard you describe many times this as distributed ledger technology.
Right, yeah.
Can you describe to me why the two terms?
I think it's something that I try and do. I've tested it on a few panels where I don't want to inherit in a presentation all the negative stigma of cryptocurrencies and ICOs and SCOs. So I've chosen to look at the technology in its parts. Akamai talks about the edge and having servers at the edge of the network. One would argue that that's a distributed compute platform, but we choose to call it the edge. In the same way that I take blockchain and I address that technology as distributed ledger. I think the words are easier to digest, they have less of a nefarious stigma, and frankly, when I'm talking about the technology with people and with scientists and academics, they know exactly where I'm coming in on the narrative. Oh, Akamai's just addressing the notion of a ledger or a journal in the cloud. You're not doing cryptocurrencies. Well, I could do cryptocurrencies, but really distributed ledger is where we're focusing right now.
Yeah, and the term is specific and clear, whereas blockchain is...
Yeah, it's kind of like bring your own use case, and then conversations, when you have that generic a term, when you have that hyped a term, it's hard to wrangle in the conversations.
Yeah, interestingly, as you were talking about hype, it occurred to me that hype is the fuel for ideas before they make money, right? Like until they're making money, you've got to fuel them with something, and at some level, hype is part of the fuel.
Absolutely, best evidenced by the amount of press and the ratio of the press to actual production traffic that goes through blockchains. There is an exhaustive amount of press. I'm a member of a whole bunch of Telegram rooms, and I get a ton of information. And really, when you scratch the surface, all that is the coal generating the hype engine, it's needed. It's needed.
Yeah.
You know, where does this funding come from if it's not coming from the hyped ideation of new technology?
Right. Tell me why Akamai got into distributed ledger technology.
Yeah, that's a really, you know, it happened, it's a customer-led innovation. And I think all innovation should be somewhat customer-led. The story goes, about 3 years ago, a major customer who we provide security solutions for came to us with a real problem statement, a real business challenge. They said, we're interested in a new payment network that's able to process millions of transactions per second, be able to verify and validate a series of blocks in a distributed ledger in under 2 seconds, and of course, still be secure and maintain a lot of the key tenets of distributed ledger and smart contract technology. And what we did is we looked around at what flexible and open source technologies existed, and we looked at the assets that Akamai had of 250,000 servers distributed at multiple levels of the internet, and we said, you know what? Nothing off the shelf is going to do it. We're going to have to go in a back room and build something from scratch that A, took advantage of what Akamai's already built, and one, satisfied the customer demand, both of equal importance. So that's kind of the genesis of where this came from, and we worked for about 36 months. We're about 38 months into the project, and we're proud to say that we have our own consensus model. We've been able to build our own distributed ledger because we know that in the next few years, the scalability of the distributed ledger platform we built is going to be a transformative technology for the Akamai product offering. It's going to run next to Kona Site Defender, it's going to run right next to our performance products, it's going to run right next to our CDN. It's going to be that transformative for our customers that they're going to want to take their content and data and put it on a hashed distributed ledger that runs around the world and is capable of processing millions of transactions. It is the right place for us in 2023.
Now you described the genesis of this, of our work in this, coming from a customer's specific needs. How does that then convert into a marketable product that other customers can use?
It's a challenge. It's a challenge. When you elect to be customer-led, you make key investments, bespoke investments, custom investments in certain platforms, and you need to be judicious in how you deploy that to make sure that the technology has repurposability or survivability for other use cases. I'm a student of product management, and I think that the product development lifecycle is a challenging thing to deploy. I think that I always look back on products that I've launched and said, oh, I would have done that a little differently. It's challenging to take something that's this big, this revolutionary, and I choose that word over evolutionary because I see the opportunity outside of Akamai for distributed ledger and blockchains being truly revolutionary. I got a criticism a few weeks ago that the scale and speed problem that Akamai was solving isn't really important in 2019. And I take that criticism in stride because I would hope that when the World Wide Web was launched, that someone came to the table and said, I have an idea for scaling it, and they're like, well, slow down. I really do see distributed ledgers and blockchains being as transformative and revolutionary as the World Wide Web was in the early 80s. I put my career behind it. I'm really enthusiastic about it. And to put a bullet in your question, I think that a lot of care and feeding is going to have to go into that product development lifecycle. How can Akamai, how can IBM and Hyperledger, how can Quantum Ledger from Amazon, how can all of those really good technologies go from being purpose-built, bespoke, and customized to something that everyone can use and enjoy in both B2B and B2C and B2B2C, all these different models that are viable, in the next 5 years.
What do you think companies need to think about in terms of the risks of getting involved in implementing distributed ledger technology into their existing tech ecosystem?
Yeah, you know what, I worry that there's not enough appetite in today's buyer for failure, and there's not enough appetite for risk. And failure and risk are vital to innovation. And when I look at the macroeconomic conditions in 2019, and I look at the technology like distributed ledger, I worry how recession-proof that technology is. You know, if a $5 million investment in a new data architecture that's immutable and tamper resistant and all these good things that distributed ledgers get you, if you don't have a willingness to invest in that innovation, then you got to think about the 5-year sustainability of how you're going to be handling data. To draw from my experience, I was in London, I met with a major bank, and they talked to me about how they wanted to take some of their old practices and deploy another DB2 instance, and I said, stop. That's the kind of thinking that will have you in 2 years wondering why you built this thing in the first place. You know, be willing to take that step and start looking at the new technologies. You know, another area outside of distributed ledger and blockchain that I'm investing in is the area of quantum cryptography. Those are two scary words put together, but I mean, it's going to be a brave new world in 2025. Technology has never moved as fast as it's moving now, and it's scary, and if you have an allergic reaction to risk and investments and innovation, I think that your technological journey is going to be really challenging.
I think we're going to have to leave it there. I feel like we could talk about this for another 25 minutes. Michael, thank you so much
Absolutely.
for joining us, and Akamai TV will be right back.